Welcome to the first episode of How I Generate It. I'm your host, Mike, and I'm excited to bring this new series dedicated to interviewing filmmakers, artists, and really just anyone who's doing something cool and interesting with generative AI. We're going to talk to creators about their workflows, and hopefully get a chance to meet the people behind some of your favorite AI videos, or at least some of my favorite AI videos. Thank you for being here, and without any further delay, here's my interview recorded a few days ago with Mean Orange Cat. So I am here with the creator of Mean Orange Cat. Thank you for being on the very first episode of How I Generate It.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's probably not news to you that a lot of the AI content that's out there right now, there's a lot of trailers. And I think the one thing that really sets I think one thing that sets yours apart is that you've really taken a lot of attention to the storytelling elements, both in terms of like the script and also the visuals. Like the one thing that I think you see in a lot of AI videos is just like 3-second clip, 3-second clip, 3-second clip. And there's not really a lot of variety in the shots. And yours are just very dynamic, like actual movie trailers. But they're starring an orange cat. So if we could just start, like what gave you the idea to come up with this consistent character in all of these different themed movies? Because you've just published one about The Matrix, you've done a Mad Max one, Gladiator. You're going to sort of, I imagine, movies that you really enjoy. And what
Oh,
was the idea
absolutely.
to kind of bring this consistent character into all of those?
Well, it's funny, it kind of happened organically. The company is named after and, at least partially inspired by our actual mean orange cat, whose name is
Nice.
Buzz. And he was a rescue. He was discovered in the trash and has had a, trashy attitude ever since. He is not afraid to chase us down the hall, give us some bites every once in a while just to remind us who's in charge and that sort of thing. So, he's a cat with attitude, and he was definitely a big part of our inspiration in doing this. But I named the company after that, and I made one video that I was like, oh, there should be like a get to know the mean orange cat as like a concept video. So we did this little sprawling epic of the cat going on a series of adventures set to The Cat Came Back, like an old timey recording of The Cat Came Back. And I just had so much fun putting the cat in these various scenarios that I felt inspired to take that a step further and kind of drill down on specific looks and, scenes and, films and that sort of thing. And yeah, it just kind of happened organically. It was like, oh, this would be fun with a human. This is a fun idea, but let's see if we can make it more fun and have it be, an animated character that maybe is a little more forgiving in terms of some of the AI morphing and that sort of stuff. But also, I think it's a fun character to follow.
Mm-hmm. And in that original one, I had that same feeling when I was watching it of just like, I could tell that you were having fun placing the cat in these different environments, like there's out to sea and in forest and like all of these different types of things. So it's really interesting to hear that it was almost like, it sounds like you started like making a video for your actual cat and then like, hey, let's spin this out into different videos, different movie
That is
trailers and stuff like that.
that is exactly what happened. Yep, absolutely.
That is so cool. And quick question, because so Buzz in your videos has an eye patch all the time, which I think is a nice distinctive way to set him apart. Does Buzz have one eye in real life too?
He does have both eyes, but he is
He does.
lacking a
Okay.
tail.
Oh,
He
okay.
has no tail. So that's like a harder thing to translate into,
Yeah, yeah.
the AI verse and that sort of thing, especially if we're playing half these videos in like medium shots and costumes and that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
But I figured eye patch, half a tail, they're similar.
Hmm.
And plus
And
I think it gets the attitude across. It gives them a little bit more of a instantly identifiable vibe.
yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that I really like about it is because, there's a lot of trailers that people have out and they have a big one right now is the Panavision 70 millimeter thing. And there's just like you see a lot of versions of that, which is really fun and I love it. But there's like, if you make one of those, how do you get someone interested in your next one? Do you know what I mean? And I
Totally.
think that the cat does that because you can see the cat, and like you could do a Panavision one starring the cat and it would be instantly recognizable as one of your videos, which I think is a really smart move on your part.
Oh, well, thank you. That's a fun idea. I might have to investigate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. But so you've got the cat doing different things, and you also, it's always the orange cat eye patch. I think it's, he started smoking cigarettes at some point. It was
Yeah,
funny.
yeah,
No
yeah.
one
That
smokes
is it.
cigarettes
Also,
anymore,
no, exactly.
in movies,
And
I should say.
then it's something, and it's funny. We don't smoke, so that's it is just like a random character thing. But it is almost a regrettable character thing, as the AI does love to destroy
Oh,
any like visual semblance of cigarettes like pretty regularly. It's like, oh gosh,
oh,
okay. It's just such a fine little detail half the time in
hmm,
shots that like, the morphing can really get at it. So it
yeah.
wasn't always the best idea, but
We You can evolve it, and as you go to, figure out what's working, what's not, because it seems like he's evolved a little. And the
yeah,
styles that
I
you
think he'll
use,
probably put down the butt at some point.
that's good. The styles are a little bit different for each one too. Like, so it's still the same kind of cat. The costumes are obviously, related to whatever movie trailer he's in. But the one of them is much more like a realistic, like you can almost see fur on it, and one looks a little more like not quite stuffed animal, but less realistic maybe. In terms of like when you're generating them, are you just kind of starting with a general idea for the prompts of like an orange cat with the eye patch, and then all of the styling comes in from the rest of the prompt, if that makes sense? Like when you're prompting for something that's in like ancient Rome, you're going to get a cat that looks different than, one who's in a prehistoric jungle or something.
Oh yeah, totally. And yeah, I mean, I try to stay with the basic prompt, the same basic prompt setup for the cat every single time. But it seems like a lot of the variety comes in on what the scenario is, or if I have other characters in frame, sometimes it looks different. Character consistency features haven't really crossed into the anthropomorphic animal side of things quite
Mm-hmm.
as well as I would love, but we'll see what happens in the next Midjourney update, I guess.
Yeah. Have you experimented a little with that then? Like where you've trying to like find, or like pull in some of
Oh,
your favorite
totally.
stills. Yeah. And it doesn't work.
Well, we get off model like stuff pretty regularly, but you just throw another render at it, try to like change the prompt up, change the wording up a little bit, and I think character consistency is still a bit of a struggle for us, but we're working on it, and I think that's across the board. I think that's what everybody's pushing towards too. So
Yeah. That's definitely, I feel like it's character consistency and then temporal stability, I guess. Like where it's just sort of like it stays the same over the course. Cause that's the other problem too, is like once you start moving the camera or you start moving the character, they just
Mhm.
start not looking as much as they should, like the
Oh yeah,
original. So,
believe
yeah.
me, I know.
But I think that like you do a good job with the editing in terms of really getting around some of those shortcomings by like, having like quick edits. And I feel like the framing, sometimes I feel like a lot of shots are always pushing in AI stuff, like that it's always kind of like trying to put a little camera motion in, but sometimes it's really just the framing and a little bit of motion of a character within the frame does just as good a job. And I feel like you've got a lot of those. I think like in the Mad Max one, the Road Warrior one, there's things like where it's just kind of a shot and there's not a lot of movement, but it feels like cinematic because of that, I think, or feels more like a real movie because of that.
I'm so guilty of the zoom in, move a shot every single time. Like I'm so guilty of doing that all the time. It is something
Mm,
that I consciously have to stop myself from doing because, I think if you watch a real movie, the camera isn't doing that all the time. So it's one of those things you have to like, you're like, okay, settle down. It's okay. Like it's all right if every shot isn't, a crazy moving dolly shot. Like tell the
hmm.
story. Like focus on the
Yeah.
story, focus on the beats. When you do have a nice camera move or some kind of like dynamic presentation, it makes those shots stand out more because now they're standing out taller in the field.
And it adds a nice flow. I feel like when not every shot is moving, it kind of gives your eye a moment to rest on what you're looking at. And some of those shots of like in the Mad Max one, the pig and stuff like that, or Furry Road, I should say. I should call them by their actual titles, not the
Oh no, that's okay. No
not
worries.
but like in Furry Road, where there's like some of those shots of the pigs are just like I love them, and they're like great shots. It feels like wow, this is something that you would see in like a rated R Pixar movie or something like the it just looks very like real. So I think those are great.
Amazing.
Um,
Well, thank you.
yeah. I know people are always interested in like what is everyone's workflow? Like how do people work? And you've kind of alluded to it a little bit. You've mentioned a couple other, people. It sounds like there's other people on your team. In terms of like when you're starting a new project, like I know you just did the Meow Tricks. So like when you're doing that, like how long does it take from start to finish to do one of those? Where does it
So
all
yeah,
start for you?
the other members of our team, I'm basically the only person doing the AI editing and all that kind of stuff. The other members of our team are my wife, who's the producer, and then occasional writer. And then we have another person that's involved that is on the writing side of things who doesn't write everything, but is my go-to consult and wrote the Control Freaks short and is
Mm,
wrote our upcoming short that we're about to get underway with. So it's really a small team, but the beginning of the process is, I will come up with an idea. Either in this case, in the Meowtrix, was a suggestion from somebody on Discord where they were like, "Hey, like we love this most recent video, the Cat Eater video or whatever, but we'd love to see the Matrix." And I was like, "Oh,
mhm.
that's a fun idea." And
Yeah.
where these always go is like, okay, that's a fun idea. Let's see what I can get. And so I'll watch a trailer or revisit a movie or whatever and try to pick a couple frames or scenes or concepts and that sort of stuff. It's like, oh, can I get them in the costume? Can I get them in this environment? Can I, what can I get? And if I get enough keyframes or, you know, inspirational ideas where you're like, oh, I could have it set in this world, or like the Mad Max thing. It's like, oh, it'd be really fun if we were in the Mad Max world, but it was the George Miller world. So it's the penguins from his movie Happy Feet, and it's Babe from his movie Babe. These are the like springboards to the next step, which is the writing. So it's like, okay, once you know that you can get some of the stuff you're after, then you can like actually drill down and start coming up with a story. I would love to say that I do all of these with a full script written out and know exactly where I'm going, but that's really not the case. Sometimes I just get to a certain point, you get inspired, and you're like, okay, this is great. Like, I have three-quarters of a story, and you start generating the images to try to catch up with it, and then the rest can kind of take care of itself. You build up a momentum, and you're
Mhm,
like, oh, now I see the direction it needs to go. But in an ideal
yeah.
world, we're writing
Mhm,
everything out, and doing the images first, and then moving on to the motion and the editing and that sort of thing. And I try to do it that way. Obviously during the editing process, I frequently go back and add shots or, you know, change things around because you just start putting stuff on the timeline and not just cutting it in your head. And you realize,
mhm,
like, oh, I can't go from this medium shot to this medium shot because the characters in the same space or very similar space. And that looks weird. So it's like, okay, well, how can I break that up? And, it becomes a much more organic process further
mhm.
down the line. But yeah, that's kind of how things go.
And I actually think that's smart to not try like because there are so many unknowns with like, what's going to happen when I take this image and try to add motion to it and it just doesn't work out or it doesn't look the way you planned. Um, it, I feel like it's the traditional way is definitely probably to like storyboard the whole, like script the whole thing, storyboard it out and go film it. But when you can just refilm anything by opening your computer, you just want to get it going and make sure that it's working and like that the visuals are like the costumes and stuff. The Meowtrix, is it Mr. Smith? It's been a while since I've seen the Matrix. The Sphinx cat that plays Mr.
Oh
Smith
yes,
is
yes, yes.
so perfectly cast, if that's if that's the right term. It's like, oh, he's
Awesome.
such a strange like looking. That's good casting right there. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear
Um,
that. Where we actually like came up with the idea to use that cat as a villain for another one, which might happen further into the summer. So we'll see where
Oh,
if he
nice.
makes another appearance.
That's kind of, I like how this evolves. Like now this could be like he could play the villain in future movies. That's really cool.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's the fun thing that I'm discovering as we're doing these is like kind of building out the stable of go-to characters. In the Meowtrix, there was a deleted scene where I had the Weasel from Catiator
Mm.
be the guy that like the traitor character from the map from the Matrix, the one that's like on the ship with them and turns into the bad guy or whatever. So
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
like a brief moment where he showed up again. But yeah, just like building the world out, like making people familiar with the different characters and this sort of thing, I think is a fun direction to take this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna ask a follow-up on that in a little bit about the building the world out.
Sure.
But before I do that, it seems like for the most part, people when they're creating movies and stuff, you're not sticking to one tool necessarily. You're using lots of different tools. And I know, based on the little credit screens that pop up for yours, I feel like that's the situation you're into. If you could just like really quick kind of say which ones that you use and like which ones are sort of your standby for certain things.
Yeah, so I use to generate images, I use Midjourney exclusively. And then occasionally when I have the cash flow, I will sign up for Magnific and upres from there. But for image to video, I use basically everything. So I use Runway quite a bit. Uh, and I've just started using Leonardo, which I like quite a bit as well. And Hyper, Pika, and then I run everything through Topaz after that. Oh, LensGo, I have just started messing around with LensGo a little bit, like in the Catiator video. There's like a shot that I got from a stock footage website of somebody shooting a flaming arrow, and I was able to use the style transfer tool to set it back into the snowy scenario that we're in the beginning of that. So that's been like a fun
Oh,
tool to
cool.
explore also.
Yeah,
But
I haven't used that one. So wait, what does Lens Go do? It like transfers the style?
Yeah, it's a style transfer tool. I mean, they have several different tools baked into it, but one of the major things that they offer is style transfer. So you can upload your video, upload an image reference, and it will apply that reference image to the video. Varying degrees of success. Of course, if you're trying to have somebody on screen speaking and drop like the Pixar filter over it, their eyes might go a little crazy every once in a while. They might go cross, but if you're just looking for something that's stylish and interesting, I think it's a really great tool for that.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check it out. And the for Leonardo, I feel like I think that they use like stable diffusion or maybe they like some flavor of stable diffusion. I like the stuff that they do too for certain types of shots, like those panning shots, like where it orbits around someone. I feel like those are pretty good. It does a good
Stable
job
diffusion
of
is like the
keeping
thing
the
that I
back.
haven't cracked yet. I just
Yeah.
haven't. Yeah, if Leonardo uses that, then that makes sense to me because of just the way that I've seen their renders do look similar to
Hmm.
Stable Diffusion, so that does make sense. But yeah, that
Yeah.
seems to be the one that has eluded me thus far. Maybe it's just intimidating. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
I agree. I play around with it a little bit, and then whenever I try to do, I feel like you have to have like a nice computer, like with a the NVIDIA card and all that kind of stuff, to really do the open source local
Yeah.
stuff. And all of that stuff that I see on like the Stable Diffusion Reddit forum is amazing. Like it's mind blowing, but like it's stuff that I
Oh, all
feel
the
like,
morphing stuff and that stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's
it's
so
so
wild.
cool.
It was just like, oh my
I
gosh, like I'm not doing that with any of the other tools that I'm using right now. You're like,
I
okay.
know. It's cool too because the workflow piece, I don't know if you've seen this, but they can copy a workflow. So you can basically just get this like little file. I think you can do it as an image or just like a file and then bring it in and like all of this like connections and stuff will happen in Comfy UI. So it can do this really complicated workflow and people just like share an image and be like, here's how I did it. And they'll drop a workflow and you can
Oh,
just
that's awesome.
take that workflow and do it. So I love like the open source community and I love how they
Yeah.
share stuff like that, which is really
No,
cool.
that's so cool. And that's something that's like super prevalent in the AI generating community in general. It's just like everybody is very upfront about sharing their workflow and and sharing in general. And it's
Yeah.
it's great. It's very fun.
I know that's one thing I like about it too, and a lot of it too. I think is because I don't know how much you did in like the Discord servers early. Like I think a lot of generation is still done in the Discord servers. I know like Runway and Pika and Hyper all have their like browser based versions, but when it's in Discord for a lot of it, some of those wouldn't let you do private generations on your own server. So you're just out there with everyone else, like generating content, and everyone's
Yeah.
kind of just like, like out there, putting your prompts in, seeing what you get. And I feel like at first that was really weird to me because it's like, oh, I don't want people to see like my mistakes, or I don't want people to, like I have this idea and I don't want someone to steal it. Like I think that's a good idea that you have at first, but then it's just kind of like, no, this is great to see what everyone's working on, and everyone's kind of has their own creative vision, which is cool.
Especially, I totally agree with you, and especially early on in the process, I think it's so helpful because
Hmm.
you get to just see everybody's stuff just right there laid out. And you're like, oh, I wonder how that turned out. And you can just scroll up and see how, everybody's workflow is going. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember it was one of the things that was really exciting to me when I first started doing any of this stuff. So yeah, it's definitely a space that's worth continuing to create in.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned having, expanding the world of these characters and stuff like that. I think that's a really interesting idea because as the technology changes and gets better, eventually we'll have things like Sora and whatever Google announced this week. And the quality will just keep getting better. Like I feel like we're like everyone feels like that's right around the corner to me. I feel like that kind of stuff is I feel it's just going to be so either so expensive or so time consuming that it's not going to be in the hands of
Oh,
everyone for a
I
while.
totally agree. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I am not waiting for Sora.
No.
Like
Same.
when it shows up, it'll be great, but and presumably, but I'm not waiting for it. And uh, it's exciting and it's cool, but I totally agree. My expectations for it are like I'm not going to be able to afford to play with it. So
Yeah. it there's so many stories about like, and I don't know the exact because no, I don't think anyone really knows, but like you see just like how long it takes to render like 1 minute of video and how many, GPUs it takes to render that
oh
minute and
yeah,
stuff like that. So it's just going to be like exorbitantly expensive, which I think is why they're trying to go after, more business users rather than like independent creators, where I think Stable
sure.
Diffusion and like some of these other companies are trying to look at like how to help individuals be more creative, which I think is great.
Yes, no,
Sora,
I
like you
totally agree.
said, Sora will be great. I will try to use it when I can get it, but like I'm not holding my breath for it either.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but it will but there will be improvements just across like the ones that you're currently using, like with Hyper and Pika and Runway. And so how do you envision like the kinds of stories that you tell changing over time?
Well, that's the thing is like our next video is not a cat video. Our next video
Mhm.
is like a wholly original story. It's going to be like a more animated style. And yeah, I think, the tools are only getting better. Things are gonna like the image fidelity is going to get better, movement's going to get better. It's all going to get better. The Really what you have to concentrate now on is okay, like the technology will catch up. What kind of stories do you want to tell? And
Mhm.
I don't have like a big roadmap for what I envision the brand as, but I think it'll develop as we're going down the road. If people like the original thing that we're putting together, there's definitely a world where we do more episodes of that, and then maybe a couple of the cat tribute stories, like it in the in between. I don't know. I like the organic aspect of all of this stuff, and the speed and relative low cost for all of it means that I can fly by the seat of my pants a little bit and just worry about each project as an individual. Like I kind of have an idea of some of the stuff that I want to do down the road, but it's not, it's very flexible and yeah, I think that's a fun way to approach the creative process. It's like, okay, like what's inspiring you right now? I wasn't planning on doing a Matrix short. Somebody mentioned it and I was like, you know what? I can explore that. Let's just
Mhm.
go ahead and do it.
Well, I have like a saying that helped me when I first started like getting into the video stuff. And the thing that resonated with me was like generate and iterate. You're going to generate
That's
something and
perfect.
then you get the result and you iterate. So just generate, iterate, generate, iterate. And I feel like what you just said is almost like a zoomed out version of that. Like it's not just an individual clip that you're generating, but you're generating a trailer, going to learn something from that and then move on to the next thing. Try a new short, learn something from that, move on to the next thing. I think it's that constant exploring of, what you want to do creatively that makes AI video so exciting right now.
That was
So
so much better put than what I said. Thank you.
no, you said great.
That is exactly what I meant. Thank you.
Speaking of the future, we kind of talked about Sora a little bit, but one thing I've personally felt, and I know some people have left comments, and I've seen people talk about this in like Reddit and Discord as well. There's this sense that like there's so many things coming out every week. Like you'll be working on a project, and then like Midjourney will come out with like consistent characters. Like, oh, do I go back and restart this now, or like how do I do this? And then like for me at least, I'll open up YouTube and like half of my videos are like people talking about everything's a total game changer and this update will blow your mind and stuff. And it's just like feels so overwhelming. How do you focus on getting work done in light of the fact that like from the time you start the project to the time you end it, there's probably going to be like three amazing mind-blowing updates, that have come out in that amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. The the technology is moving at such a rate that yeah, the stuff changes very quickly. Like there was a day I remember I was doing a bunch of work on a Sunday and then I logged in on a Monday. I think this was to Runway or something, and like the entire UI had changed. I was like, oh my gosh, like just overnight, midway through a
Yeah.
project, and you're like, all right, I hope this doesn't. I hope everything still looks the same. But I think you just have to learn to roll with the punches a little bit, and I think each new development is a potential thing to explore, but I think you have to, kind of eat what's on your plate before you move on to the next thing. Just the temptation to go back and fix things is very real. I created a bunch of stuff last summer, just purely for fun, just personal work or whatever. And the temptation to redo every single one of those is very high for me. But it's I think you just have to explore new things and
Mhm.
get inspired by what the new thing that's being offered is, or see how that new thing can improve or affect the next project.
Hmm. Yeah, and also like there's going to be another update 6 months from now that will make you want to go back again. Like it's like, oh, I should
That's
have
it, right?
waited
It's
6 months.
Yep. No, you're totally right. That is exactly what happens.
So I think people like tips. I've done a couple demos for Runway's multi motion brush, and
Oh,
I feel
awesome.
like people ask a lot like, how do you make people blink though? I know in one of your videos there is a character. I noticed it. I was like, oh, that character blinks. I have to ask about that. So is there a trick to that? Like, did you prompt it, or is this one of those like lucky kind of things that happened?
I
How did
think I
that
know what
work?
you're talking about. I think it's in Control Freaks, right? It's in
Control freaks, yeah,
the
control
animated one.
freaks,
Yeah, yeah. I think we just got lucky. Like I think
yeah.
we used Pika exclusively for that one. I used a variety of different prompting to get
Mhm.
results for that, and I actually used the Discord mostly for that one.
I thought it was a cool use of Pika's like I forget what they call it, but like where you can replace a thing. Did you use Pika for
You
that
know
at
what? It's
all that
funny.
way?
We didn't use it.
Wow.
I did the very region in
Oh,
Midjourney, and then
Mid
I would just
Journey.
make
Okay.
hard cuts. I would animate both ends of the shot and then
Uh,
just do hard cuts
that's interesting. Oh, very
in
cool.
between. But
Because I thought for sure because I saw you use Pika and I was like, oh, that's a really good use of like their like add sunglasses or change their outfit or whatever. So okay, so you did it in Mid Journey
yeah,
with
just did it in
in
Midjourney.
painting.
But presumably it works the same way, with Pika. I just haven't really had a chance to explore that.
Cool. So you did it in the Discord. Nice.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think it's just again like kind of using traditional filmmaking techniques to do that. If they were trying to make somebody disappear in like silent movie era, they just stop the camera, take the person out, and then roll the camera again. And so that's what I was kind of doing throughout that process.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it is like there's times where like there's all of this amazing new technology, and sometimes you just have to remember like, oh, you can just go back to the basics and just like do a cut. You know, you
Exactly.
don't have to like
Yeah.
you don't have to generate it. You can just cut it. Um,
Plus, we were on a timeline for that. We're on like a deadline, so it wasn't really
mm,
the chance to explore technologies at that moment. I was like, okay, let's get this done.
mhm.
Come on.
Yeah. I do want to know what is something that you wish AI was a little bit better at right now. The AI video is a little bit better at that would make your life
Uh,
easier as you're creating these.
Well, very selfishly, eye patches. I wish I was able to have the eye patch not go away. Have like 3/4 of my generations are just like, oh, he's like looking one direction and the eye patch is gone, or like the eye patch becomes
Oh.
sunglasses and that sort of stuff. So I guess stronger image fidelity would be great. Improved resolution would be really great. One of the places that I feel like the stuff really struggles with are those in between shots. Like it has the close up and the medium shot down. It has the epic wide shot down, no problem.
Mhm.
It's that like kind of standard wide shot of like a character in a space where it starts to get funky, where it's like, okay, like you can have the background move in a certain way and you can
Mm.
have the foreground move in a certain way, but you're going to start losing those details that make the characters
Mhm.
identifiable.
Like, that's specifically, like, in the image to video process you're talking about, right? Because you can
Yes.
generate
Yeah,
those
yeah, yeah.
images no problem in Midjourney, but then, like, when you bring them
Exactly.
in to move it, it's like all of a sudden, "Oh, it's just a blur now." Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly right.
And in terms of the future, what about the future excites you right now?
Oh gosh. I mean, we've only been involved in, doing stuff publicly for a couple months and it's been really exciting. I've loved every moment of just being able to share with the community and continue these relationships with other creators. I think that's it. I think I would love to just continue, you know, talking to people and like having each other influence each other's work. And, I
Yeah, I think community, I think that's what you're getting at. There's not as many people doing this as it seems like there is. Like, when you're in this, it seems like everyone's doing it, but, a lot
it's a
of
very
people doing
vocal
it.
community. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's great because the other side is pretty vocal too. I don't know if you've ever tried to share anything AI with like other subreddits, but I have learned that the tolerance for AI is not as broad as I thought it was.
Yeah.
It's funny to me that people react so strongly in the negative to something that isn't ruining the world. I don't know. Like the fear of AI is real, and I get it because it's a new technology and new stuff's always a little scary. But uh, I don't know. I think it's just so fun that if anybody that is down on it spent a couple days playing around with these tools, I think they'd be changing their tune pretty quickly.
I feel like since I've been able to do AI stuff, the amount of consuming other people's stuff, watching TikToks or whatever, has gone down a lot. And now I'm just creating stuff instead of consuming things.
Oh,
People
you're so right.
realize.
Yep, and that is exactly what's happened to me as well. I come from a traditional filmmaking background. I made a short film that we released last year that took several years to make, and it was great. Like we were like very happy with the way that it turned out and everything, but it took several years for one 10-minute long project. Whereas this year alone, if we've released, I don't know, like four or five, six videos that, all I would say are, up to a similar standard of creativity and storytelling. And, they're exciting me and I'm having fun doing it. So,
Mhm.
I think it's really, really inspiring.
I feel like this is happening for so many other people too, who, like, you come from a traditional film background. There's people who haven't, but they love watching movies. And it's like now they're able to try and make them too. So I think it's
Exactly.
like for the people who are embracing it, are just like, I haven't heard anyone say, I don't like it. It's not that fun. Like, it seems like everyone just really gets into it, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think it's infectious. I think like once you start realizing the possibilities, I don't see how you it's hard to slow down. I've only increased my subscription rates to these things. I've only increased my tools. It's and the work has only gotten more fun. So yeah, I think it's infectious.
Yeah. Yeah. My subscriptions are out of control.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you so much for being on this first episode of How I Generate. It's been so fun talking to you.
A
And I hope
pleasure.
you'll come back sometime when you're doing some of these other projects that you're talking about now. It'd be fun to check back in with you and see how those are going too.
For sure, I would love that.
Where can people find you? And I will put links in the description as well.
So we are Mean Orange Cat, just everywhere, basically on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, any of those other places. Mean Orange Cat, and then you should be able to Google us at this point. I think we have like a standard website, but that should be it.
That's great. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you. And thank you again for being on the show.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, listener, for joining us on this episode of How I Generate It. If you enjoy conversations like this with AI creators, don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, stay curious and keep generating and iterating.